Hey Tom, hey Jason, hello everybody else who might be listening. Um, this is a response to Tom's second video. So I've got a few notes and I'll try to go through all of that and not take too much of your time. So the first thing is you bring up a lot of points and I'd like to take a moment and kind of organize the conversation the way that I'm seeing it right now. And the way that I'm seeing this going is that there are two directions that the conversation is going. And one is nailing down the basic features that we'd like to see on the site, nailing down the initial focus on the site, and getting ready as quickly as we can to start actually working on something and putting something out there. In connection to that, you can see my questions to Jason, for example, about online versus real life community and about what he might find useful. The other conversation that's going on at the same time is more about the overarching goal and direction that the whole site is going. And this is probably a bigger conversation, and I can see that taking a longer time and possibly it never will end. But it is a good thing to have that discussion even now. And so my questions about the Buddhist versus secular focus, or about different traditions in Buddhism, questions about money, and stuff like that, they're all related to that part of the conversation. So, about the So regarding this first part, trying to nail down the basic vision for the site. And yeah, again, I agree that we want to get something out as soon as possible and something that is easy and really quick for people to get involved with. We really don't want to get in people's way. We want to help them get out of their way and enable them to start practicing as soon as possible. And so, in that respect, I think the Facebook Connect idea that you brought up is really interesting because it will let us create profiles for people with some basic information that's already there and won't require people to type all that in again. And so that I think is a great idea. Requiring people to have a Facebook or a Twitter account, I think you're right in saying that that's a bit of a high bar for entry. If at some point we figure out that we have a problem with fake profiles or that people are using the sites for purposes that we think are inappropriate or whatever, we can add that requirement later if we think that that's um, what will solve that problem. But for now, I think looking at Facebook or Twitter profiles as a way to jumpstart your profile on Sit With Me is a great idea. The next part I want to touch on is just basically the things that I think I will find useful in this kind of site. And I think you're right in pointing out that it would be good to create something that we, the people involved in it, will find useful. And so here's a few things that I think will be useful for me. And one of those things is supporting Sangha in real life, supporting real life community. You bring up Sit With Me branded meetups, and that's not really what I had in mind when I was talking about that. I'm envisioned more something like helping people create small groups that meet together and practicing in whatever way it is that they want to practice. Something like peer-led sitting groups or kalyanamita groups, if you're familiar with that term. There's a pretty good explanation for what those are like and what they're about on the Spirit Rock website. So supporting real life sangha, I think, is important. The next thing is connecting with people, and that is both an online and real life thing. But the way that I see it, and I think it's partly inspired by Ethan Nichtern's talk at the Buddhist Geeks Conference, is that while the web might be a good way to get people into the practice, we need something more than that to get them to keep practicing, to keep going. And I think that real life connections, a real life sangha and community is a very important factor in this. And then the next thing that's kind of related to both of those, I'd like to see a way to organize events. I was just at a half-day long this weekend that was organized by some people here and published on a local mailing list. And there was a nice turnout of about 15 to 20 people. And I think people got a lot of that, of their time together. And I think that this is really the kind of thing that an online website can be really useful to help create and promote, especially a website that focuses on this one specific area of meditation practice. Next on my list, I put finding teachers. There are many teachers out there, and some of them are easier to find, some of them are not as easy to find, but it is definitely helpful for people at some point in their practice to find and have a relationship with an experienced teacher. And so having some way for people to put themselves out there as teachers and a way for people to find those teachers, I think would be very useful. So to some degree, this connects to your metaphor of a dating site, because all of these four issues that I just brought up will probably be based on this kind of matching component where the website matches people with perhaps other people in their area, with teachers in their area, with local communities in their area, or helps them find events in their area. So there is something to that, although I really don't know that I want to work on another dating site. But that's besides the point. So this was all mostly, I think, about the initial version of the site and what what our initial focus should be on. The second thing that I'd like to touch on briefly is more about the general identity of the site, and this is to some degree part of that longer conversation that I mentioned before. What I hear you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you envision this site as kind of a technological skeleton that enables people to connect with each other, but doesn't really have all that much of its own content, and definitely doesn't have its own agenda except enabling people to connect. There is another option that I'd like to bring up, and I don't know if I've brought this up before, definitely not very clearly, but I have this idea that this could work where we do have the basic technological um, infrastructure that we've discussed so far, but we also have some kind of at least a basic curriculum for teaching people basic mindfulness. Say mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of body, some meta practice, the basic stuff like that. And I think some part of the site could be used to get people through that short course over a period of, say, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks or maybe a little bit longer. And this could be either just static content that we just put on the website or we link to, or it could be a more formal curriculum that the site supports. And in this respect, I want to point you to Mindful Schools, which I think I've linked to from the wiki on the related resources page. So check them out and see what they do. I think that offering an online version of that is peer supported and taught by other people that have gone through it could be also a really useful way to get to help people to jumpstart their practice. So yeah, check out Mindful Schools and see what you think about that. And I see that I've been speaking for over 12 minutes, so I'm gonna stop now, and I'll see you around.